Hello and welcome to today's Movers and Shakers virtual event. My name is Simon Montgomery. I am the Regional Director of Movers and Shakers. For those of you who are new to Movers and Shakers, welcome. We are the leading property networking forum in the UK. This is our 25th year of delivering events, bringing together key players from both the private and public sectors from all parts of the UK. On to today's session, delivering more and better homes across the West Midlands. Building new homes, achieving housing targets was a challenge even before the pandemic. How big a part will new ways of working play in the future prosperity of the housing market? How will the sector change? How is the West Midlands going to kickstart and get back to growth? Lots of topics, lots of questions, and we have assembled a fabulous panel to tackle all the aforementioned topics. And a quick introduction to the chairperson to the panel. The chairperson today is Faraz Baber, who is the director at Terence O'Rourke. Councillor Ian Ward is a leader of Birmingham City Council. Ashley Kensington, who is the managing director of Berkeley Group St Joseph. James Blakey, who's a planning director at Moda Living. And Adam Willips is the associate director at Urban Splash. Our sponsors today are Terence O'Rourke. Terence O'Rourke are an interdisciplinary practice covering planning, master planning, architecture, landscape design through to environmental and heritage services. They have offices in London, Birmingham and Bournemouth. With a fabulous client base, they have a track record in bringing forward successful estate regeneration schemes and unlocking strategic industrial locations to deliver homes and jobs. As a practice, they are driven towards delivering high quality place-making schemes, and we thank them for their support today. To kick things off, we have Councillor Ian Ward, who is presenting a keynote, talking about the changes coming, working together to our mutual advantage so the West Midlands can prosper, and he may even touch on the update on the latest on the Commonwealth Games. We look forward to that. So I hope you all enjoy today's session. So without further ado, I will hand you over to Councillor Ian. So Councillor Ian, over to you. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Simon, and good afternoon to everyone. Birmingham, of course, is a city of growth, and up until the arrival of the pandemic and the lockdown last March, we had been experiencing one of our most exciting periods of regeneration and development in recent times. One of our key priorities is the creation of a sustainable city of culture and flourishing neighbourhoods to support an inclusive economy and healthier citizens. So the supply of high quality housing to meet the wide-ranging housing needs of Birmingham's existing and future residents is essential to helping people thrive and prosper. But we do face challenges across the housing agenda here in Birmingham and indeed across the wider West Midlands. In meeting our housing need, particularly in the area of affordable and social housing, within the city boundary, we have to deliver some 51,000 housing units between now and 2031. 35% of those need to be social and affordable, and that is a challenge. Housing affordability itself, income to house price ratio in Birmingham is 6.56, compared to the core city average, which is 6.24. And of course, until the lockdown and the policy of all in, we were experiencing high levels of homelessness and rough sleeping in the city. Over the last 6 months, the level of rent arrears, both with the City Council's housing and indeed in the private rented sector, has grown considerably. When the moratorium ends, I fear that we are going to see a large increase in homelessness across Birmingham. We also need to address the links between poor housing, fuel poverty, low educational attainment, poor health, and low levels of economic activity. The challenge faced by the council and its partners is to break these links and ensure routes to economic prosperity by ensuring an adequate supply of high quality housing right across the city. Birmingham's population is projected to grow by 156,000 by 2031. As I mentioned earlier, we have an ambitious plan to deliver over 51,000 new homes within the city's boundary, and that is set out in the Birmingham Development Plan. In terms of overall new housing completions, we have actually exceeded our local plan target for the period through to 2018-19. However, we have under-delivered on affordable and social housing completions and have only met 59% of our target. But it's not just about numbers. We want development in Birmingham to contribute to a strong sense of place, local distinctiveness, safe, inclusive and attractive environments. And we want to encourage people to move around by cycling and walking, optimising the use of low carbon energy and sustainable design. The coronavirus has had and will continue to have an impact on the national economy and the practicalities of building new homes. Construction was suspended on most sites during the lockdown. However, planning permissions remain stable due to remote working and the creation of a virtual planning committee that has worked surprisingly well. In fact, it's a wonder to me that holding meetings, particularly meetings of people needing to gather across large distances, was always thought to be difficult prior to the lockdown. But of course, the solution to that was under our noses throughout. And these platforms such as Zoom and Teams have been utilised by the City Council to ensure that we can continue delivering services to people across the city and indeed can continue with meetings of the Planning Committee in order to grant planning consents across the city. Over the last 6 months as well, the City Council has been busy preparing an economic recovery strategy, which we'll be bringing out for consultation shortly. Our priorities are place development, a green recovery, supporting people and businesses, especially protecting jobs and helping people find training and work, and unlocking and accelerating infrastructure investment. The recovery strategy will include projects to boost the development of high quality affordable housing, deliver transport infrastructure, support our high streets, create new employment opportunities and continue to support the delivery of key transformational projects like Smithfield and the Langley Urban Extension, where we are building some 6,000 new homes in North Birmingham, the equivalent of building Bridge North. Structural changes to the residential property market, together with an anticipated squeeze on housing ownership demand that have all been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, will require a re-examination of our affordable housing delivery plans. The Birmingham Municipal Housing Trust programme has plans for some 3,000 new homes over the next 9 years. All of that relies on cross-subsidy from sales. And those sales assumptions are now having to be revised based upon lower sales returns. So funding for affordable and social housing going forward is going to be needed if we're to meet our needs in these particular areas. I think a new model is going to be required. The government needs to rethink where it is on the supply of affordable and social housing. And I think the reality is, particularly in the area of social housing, public money is going to be required if we're going to meet what is an increasing demand for social housing in the future. Having said all of that, we do have a number of new developments due to start on site in the autumn, notably the site at Farnborough Road in Castle Vale, which is due to commence in October. This is a scheme BMHT have worked on jointly with Pioneer to develop some 124 new homes. And of course, we will also maximise the positive legacy of the Commonwealth Games in Perry Barr through direct housing delivery and broader interventions that will support the wider regeneration of Perry Barr. The announcement that was made in the middle of August that we can no longer deliver the village in time for the Commonwealth Games in 2022 because of delays to the pandemic does not mean we will not go on to still deliver the housing. The housing legacy from the Commonwealth Games is of course important to the overall legacy for the city. So those 1,400 new homes will continue to be developed. Indeed, if you go out to the site, you'll see the cranes are still up. There's some 400 staff still working on that site. And those homes will be the catalyst for a further 2,000 homes in the wider area, helping to meet some of our housing need in Birmingham. So by 2022, the first phase of the residential scheme will have been delivered to provide those new homes alongside highway works completed to unlock the development sites, as well as an improved environment for active travel, a new station and a new bus interchange, all making the village site one of the most connected residential sites in the whole of Birmingham. So in spite of everything, in spite of the pandemic, in spite of the lockdown, in spite of the challenges that we continue to face going forward, I remain optimistic that Birmingham will continue to be a city of growth, will continue to deliver the housing needs of all of its citizens. Thank you very much.
Am I now online? I think I am. In which case, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Faraz Barber from Townstoke Raw. And as the panelists all congregate around onto the room that we're in, I just wanted to just do one follow-up question, if I may, Councillor Ward, and that was on the issue. You helpfully gave us an update about your committee's cabinet convening virtually, so keeping the business sort of process going on, which is really helpful, and certainly the update you've given us on the Commonwealth Games equally so. Just perhaps very briefly give us an update on where you are with the delivery of Smithfields, and of course there was an ODU process underway for the Steaming Ladywood. How are those two schemes going? And I guess the point I'm really sort of tuning into to get a sense from you is the planning is one element, but of course the key is also to see the delivery from those schemes as well. And from your lens, how are you seeing the delivery post-consent and indeed post some of these processes actually happening in the city right now?
Yeah, thanks, Faraz. As far as Smithfield is concerned, we're on the cusp now of finally signing our contractual joint venture with Lendlease. We have a report going to the Birmingham Solihull LEP in October. Will release the funding that the final piece of funding that will make the scheme work, and we anticipate then the joint venture being signed either towards the end of this calendar year or very early next year. So that is now moving forward. It's of course a very, very important site for Birmingham, largest mixed-use site, certainly in a city centre anywhere in Europe, and it delivers a significant chunk of housing, along with new location for Birmingham's markets, a new public square that will be the site of events in the future, some green space, and of course workspace as well, including some joint work livable space, which I think there's going to be an increasing demand for in the future. Ladywood is also a very important scheme. That is a regeneration scheme, housing renewal scheme, that will transform that area right on the edge of the city centre. There's been a lot of interest in the ODU process, and so we anticipate that we'll be moving that project forward and in a position to announce a partner in the very near future. Overall, on delivery, I think delivery is now increasingly challenged moving forward, having to work with the social distancing regulations for the pandemic. But nonetheless, as I mentioned earlier, we are meeting our overall housing numbers that we have to deliver in line with the Birmingham plan. Our real challenge is around social and affordable housing, where we have a significant shortfall, and we are going to need a new model if we're going to deliver those numbers for what is an increasing number of people in actual fact, because there's over 1 million people on social housing waiting lists up and down the country, and indeed a report by Shelter a few years ago demonstrated that in spite of Help to Buy schemes, a housing that's deemed affordable is in actual fact unaffordable for 83% of those in England who are in the rented sector. So it remains a real challenge.
And I think what we'll do as we go through the discussion is sort of talk about how we can sort of fill that gap and get the right sort of homes that you're requiring as a priority, particularly as we're going to look at a little bit of planning reforms as well. So we've got our panel. The aim is to have a sort of conversation rather than sort of me just throwing lots of questions, as much as I'd love to do that, but I'm going to use this expert panel to sort of share ideas and conversation. But to kick things off, in the sort of 40, 50 minutes that we have, I'll invite Ashley from St. Joseph at Berkeley just to give us a sense from the private sector lens, from a commercial perspective, what, if anything, do you think has now changed in Birmingham and indeed across the West Midlands, actually? What do you think is the sort of biggest challenge for the region? Is it sort of land values? Is it the sort of resourcing the schemes? Give us a sense of that, and how you're in this current environment to deliver the home that you've set out for both Birmingham and across the region.
I think, to be fair, not a lot has changed. The fundamentals for the region are still there. And the reason why we're all developing there is still there. I think our biggest challenge at the moment surrounds COVID and the challenges that brings to us on a daily basis. So it is changing quite a lot. We're having to replan our business, not quite daily as we were, but at least weekly, which is unusual for a developer. Only this week we found out we can't get supplies of ovens and fridges, and we've got a big name supplier that we're finding that lead-ins have gone from 2 weeks for items like that to probably now 16 weeks. So we're finding some challenges with resources. We're finding quite a lot of challenges with labour supply. And trying to keep our sites safe. So for us at the moment, the biggest challenge is trying to carry on delivering, but delivering in a safe way, and dealing with the things that are thrown at us. Working remotely, all of our key partners, we've been trying to keep moving, and everybody has been very receptive to that. But without shadow of a doubt, it's much more easier to have a face-to-face meeting. I think Councillor Ian Ward said earlier we're likely to have a second wave, and I think that's inevitable. So that is going to impact us again. I think the other thing as well is we've got sites like at East Side Locks in the city, which we're trying to get into production. And the problem we've got with that is we've got 30,000 square feet of commercial in that scheme, which we very much want to deliver. But at the moment, with the way that the high street is changing and the rapid change that COVID is bringing to our daily lives, as a developer who's planning a scheme that's not going to be used by customers and the public for 3 or 4 years, I've got no idea what that space will look like. So I think for us at the moment, it's dealing with the immediate challenges of COVID and actually what does the new world look like. We're even looking at things like what is the quality of product and what do people expect outside of COVID. So I think we're all experiencing working from home. Do we want something different from the homes that we live in? Do we need to design differently? So the amount of challenges that we're looking at and facing, I think this will be long impacting on the industry going forward.
That's really helpful, and I probably will pose a similar question to Adam and James. But Adam, similarly with the add-on question of how are you finding business and operating, because of course you've got a rather large scheme called Port Loop that you're sort of delivering in the city. But are you at the same time having to have a rethink about the master plan, have a think about how you approach that scheme to make it more sort of in tune with what we're seeing as a sort of changing pattern of working from home, as well as obviously we hope going back to the sort of city and doing our business. But how are you finding business? How are you rethinking your sort of current master plans and schemes that you've got going?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like Ashley, we're having to adapt continually. We had to shut 13 live sites during lockdown, take stock, but get delivery back and get it back working safely with all the contracting partners. I think you have been affected by timescales and leading times, but I think one benefit of building using modular construction, we've probably been slightly less affected than others. In fact, the first day we reopened in May, I think we built 10 houses in 4 days. So it wasn't all doom and gloom. We remain cautiously optimistic. I mean, before COVID, there was strong interest in Port Loop and nationally with the products we're delivering. I think what we've seen coming out of COVID, people are stress testing in their homes. and we've seen strong demand at Portloop for people looking for flexible homes and more space, outdoor space particularly, of which we've got an abundance. I think what COVID's accelerated a lot of thinking we were already thinking about at Portloop over the last 4 years with the master plan. You said it yourself, you know, how more people working from home, we were already thinking about that. And, you know, both from the outside space and the products we deliver, you know, firstly with the homes, providing flexible space for people to live how they want, basically. So if they want a study rather than having an extra bedroom, we can cater to that with the products we're delivering. And then obviously the outside space is key as well. One thing that was really interesting during COVID, one thing we approached with the master plan that we haven't done differently was before we did a manifesto. You know, we want green streets, not mean streets. We want to encourage community. All the houses are built around sort of the 15 metre by 20 metre shared garden. And what was great during COVID was seeing the use of that space. You know, the first residents had outdoor cinemas. It was great to see. It might not work, but we hope it's a success. And certainly a lot of the things that have been accelerated during COVID, we'd already sort of started to build into the master plan. And I mean, it's early days for us. We're sort of 200 homes into a 1,000 home community, and it's going to evolve and change. But it's exciting for Portloop. You know, we've got a 1 acre park now. We've got 68 modular homes, and the end of this year is going to be a bigger milestone that we're going to hit, which is our first apartments using kind of cross-laminated timber and being something again different that we're doing in the country and in Birmingham. So yeah, optimistic, but a bit of caution ahead.
And that's really helpful, and that sort of spirit is what we need. But you know, when you're reporting back to your board, and it's an important lens to look at, because we often sort of put the place and emphasis on how sort of the public sector work. But you know, what's the sort of in your board right now? And Urban Splash is well renowned dealing with tough regeneration projects, working very closely with the private sector, and perhaps, you know, when thinking about Councillor Ward's challenge around social housing as well, you know, what's the sort of sentiment inside your board right now in terms of delivery, in terms of continuing? You inferred there's still a strong appetite, but you know, when you're talking to your board today, what is the feeling inside about the sort of next 6 to 12 months and what that project plan looks like?
Well, I mean, at the moment, the sentiment is we've got a number of big, really exciting schemes around the country where we've got demand. You know, people want the modular homes that we've been offering. We've done quite a few schemes up and down the country now. We can show people the product, we can take them around, show them the space, show them how flexible it is. The early days of modular, when we did our first ones, is a bit of a test. But the sites we're live at, so Portloop, Cambridge, in Manchester, you know, we've got numbers through the doors who are dead keen to buy the product. So we want to keep the factory busy. We want to keep delivering. We're not putting the brakes on at the moment. That's the sentiment in the board.
And I've got to ask the spiky question, because of course you'll have various that the City Council will have posed on your consent. Are they addressing those in a timely manner? Do you feel, while of course we've heard Councillor Ward talk about the committee operating and the cabinet doing a great job and things motoring on, but the detail is what matters actually in development terms. And I'll bring that to all of you, but are those conditions getting signed off in a timely manner?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to sound like I'm only saying this because Councillor Ward's on the call, but generally, we've had a really great relationship with Birmingham planners in the last 4 years at Portloop. You know, it's been working really well. I mean, in fact, we put in a permission recently, and I think it got determined in 14 weeks. So it was like a week over the 13-week determination period. But there's definitely a can-do attitude with the planners I work with Portloop. I clearly won't name them, but it's certainly you go in and it's how can we solve any issues together rather than go away and solve that yourself. And generally, to be honest, I work in a few other places as well, and certainly my experience of planning's it's been good. I mean, a lot of for the planners, a lot of the problems, it's not their fault. The red tape they have to work within. If we can get rid of some of that red tape, I think it'll give them an easier job and certainly you know, help with getting innovative developments going faster.
I'm seeing some questions. I will come back to those, I promise, as they get submitted. But before I look at some of those in more detail, James, building on some of those questions we've heard, you know, obviously from a BTR lens that Moda sort of puts forward, you've got a huge scheme that you're putting forward in the city centre. How are you finding business in Birmingham, and you know, how are you sort of seeing the way forward? And I think probably answer a little bit of the question and challenge that Councillor Ward puts around sort of the need of social housing, because I think BTR has a role it can play in supporting the communities that Councillor Ward wants to target. How are things faring over there, James or Moda?
Oh, I mean, I'd echo some of the things that Adam has said there. I mean, it's very much a can-do attitude. It's the art of the possible with Birmingham and also the region as well. I mean, we've been with our relationship with Birmingham in particular for quite some time, and the pleasure of meeting Ian on a number of occasions with senior officers such as Simon Delahunty Forest, etc. And there's always been that attitude that this is a dynamic and vibrant city, and you only have to sort of walk around the city to see that. And I think the other thing there is about the way that the city doesn't stand still. It's very innovative, and there's some great initiatives in the emerging transport plan. Again, you look at that and you think, yes, absolutely, reclaiming streets, repurposing those streets for integrated public transport, cycling, pedestrians, it all sits very much at the heart of the Moda business plan in the way that we want to sort of seek to deliver. I mean, when you look at, and again, just across the region rather than just Birmingham as well, you look at the universities, you look at job retention and creation, you look at research, those establishments. There's a real depth and breadth of those things that create a vibrant place for people to live. And those are our residents. Those are the people that are going to come to us as Moda, and then hopefully they will make a Moda scheme their new home. So, and again, I think from our point of view, when you look at what we've delivered on the Mercian, and again, echoing something that Adam said, we got planning permission on our 42-storey building in 13 weeks. Sorry, Adam, 1 week before you. And we signed our Section 106 agreement the day after planning committee because we'd had early engagement. There was a real dialogue. And I think that sort of can-do attitude is sort of reflected in some of the numbers. I mean, JLL, I think it was in the last 3 years, have calculated that in the last 3 years, there have been nearly £700 million worth of BTR deals done in Birmingham alone. And again, I think that's testament to the fact that the city creates that kind of dynamism, really. And that's not to say that the conversations aren't tough, because they are. Sitting down with Simon talking about design and creating exceptional buildings and fantastic places. And because we're a long-term steward, long-term management, that's what we want. In terms of sort of viability and affordable, that is a challenge because on one hand, you're looking for that sort of quality through transformation, which again is, I've heard Ian talk about before, and that's absolutely right. And if we look at something like, Great Charles Street, which we're in the conservation area, the costs of developing, are significant. And the actual pie doesn't get any bigger. You need to slice it up in different ways. And I agree entirely. And I have these discussions elsewhere in other parts of the world that affordable housing isn't just the sole responsibility of the development industry. It's a society issue. It's a government issue. Encouraging the Secretary of State is pumping in more money to affordable housing. You've got to look at what that affordable housing is going to deliver. And here at Moda, we have affordable housing on site as a build-to-rent operator. Our affordable residents, if you want to call them that, notionally have access to all of the amenities that we provide, whether that's the gym, the cinema, health and well-being, or whatever it is. There is no distinction between residents. It is all about neighbourhoods and inclusive communities. So, again, for us, it's all about making sure that those dynamic items all delivered as part of a neighbourhood, but delivered quickly. From a rent point of view, we get planning permissions and then we move on to site as quickly as we can. And Birmingham, again, will be, fingers crossed, the first city where we've got two major Moda prime schemes, coming out of the ground and actually creating those homes for new people.
Look, I'm gonna be a bit more spiky because naturally we've got a question here which talks about the shortfall of affordable housing, which Councillor Ward referred to. And, the questions here are about an affordable housing levy on new developments. Is there an argument, Councillor Ward, that the city haven't pushed hard enough for affordable housing contributions to help get you to the numbers that you've been seeking to achieve for the city, whether that's around viability, whether it's lack of funding, whatever it might be. And you know, you've got three major developers in the virtual room now. How do you coalesce an agreement which can actually ramp up the sort of housing that you're seeking? It might not be their core business, but these are the guys who can provide those homes at pace, at an efficient rate. And it might be not that they do it directly, but within some sort of JV or in some sort of other fashion. How do you see building that, or sort of catching up on that affordable housing gap, when you know you've got partners who are clearly enjoying doing business in your city, but clearly you're not still achieving the sort of objective that you want to achieve as leader of the council, which is build those homes, those affordable homes? How do you see that? And what's your plea to them as they sit here and sort of say, how do you get to that end goal?
Well, first of all, let me thank Adam and James for their kind comments about the planning function in Birmingham City Council. It's great to hear, actually, that we are adopting a can-do attitude in planning, because that's very much our intention. We want to encourage development in the city. I think that there's we're quite robust, I think, in talking to developers about the percentage of affordable or social housing on a scheme. We certainly push at this. Well, I don't believe we are a soft touch on it, but as James was saying, there is a limit to what can be driven out value-wise from any scheme. So I think that what is going to be needed here is a new way forward. As James has said, this is a wider problem than just developers. This is a societal problem. And you look at the three great drives to build housing that took place since the Second World War. Each one of those has been driven by a significant input of public money. And I think we're going to have to go back to addressing that again in the future. I mentioned earlier that one of the things we've seen over the last 6 months during the pandemic is that rent arrears have risen significantly, both for those living in council accommodation and those living in the private rented sector. I do fear that we are going to see a big increase in homelessness as we come out of this pandemic. And so between us, whether it's the private sector, the public sector, the government, we've got to come up with a solution to this. And it will require, I think, the input of public money. The government are currently consulting, actually, through their white paper on changes to the 106 and SIL systems to create an infrastructure levy that can be used, obviously, to provide affordable. I don't think that moves us very much further on, though, other than they are opening up the possibility of local authorities borrowing against money that we're holding in that infrastructure levy fund, which is an interesting proposition, and we'll be responding to the government's consultation in due course. But I still come back to, if society really wants to address this issue, and I think we have to, then it is going to require public money.
Ashley, what do you think?
I definitely don't think that Birmingham are a soft touch. I think the challenge is there's only so much money you can spend on various different things, and obviously affordable homes is a priority, but we've got to pay for infrastructure to make sure people have got the facilities to provide for home. The regulations that we're building on all the time are constantly changing. We've got carbon and zero carbon homes coming. We've got the new building regs Part L. Just those two items alone, we've estimated could put anything between £6,000 to £30,000 per home in terms of construction costs just to achieve those two items. So I think the challenge is there's constantly requests for more and more, and there's only so far you can go in the pot. So I think there is a requirement for a different review. I think generally if more affordable housing is to be delivered, and particular in the Midlands where a lot of the sites are brownfield sites, and the push is to develop on brownfield sites, even with the new white paper, most of those sites are contaminated. They need assistance to get ready to be able to develop. It's going to need government intervention. The days where we used to get grant to help put in affordable housing, there's been not a lot of grant for a long time. So I do think there's a need for a rethink, and perhaps not only for reliance on developers to provide affordable housing through Section 106. I know Birmingham City Council build their own affordable housing. Not a lot of the other councils in the country do. So I think there's probably a requirement for a complete review.
Adam, James, is, you know, how do we answer his plea? I mean, it seems to me what we're saying, what Councillor Ward is saying here is he knows you guys are doing enough as you possibly can for your schemes, but you know, is there a call to arms to help the city council? You talked about actually the sort of council's home building program it can do itself. You know, is there something there where actually with the skill sets that you all have and the interest that you show the city council, that, you know, Councillor Ward et al. Work with you guys in some fashion to help drive this delivery? Because, you know, the issue of it's not just about building homes is an important one, because as we've seen in the many schemes that you guys produce around strong placemaking, you know, the right sort of ingredients that balance the homes with the right sort of level of design and quality of space are sort of elements that come from your experience. And while the onus for the council will to be to get those numbers there, actually what you don't want are sort of very dormant, very sterile sort of estates that could inevitably come up by a knee-jerk reaction of just getting them up. Well, I guess coming back, you know, you've got some experts there. How much are you going to engage, you know, the expertise that sits in your region to sort of help shape those sort of communities? Because the national infrastructure tariff, we'll call it that, is going to be minimal. And the very realities are that probably what infrastructure costs you derive from that could well be used on other service provisions to help your council operate. And that is your decision as a strategic leader. But, you know, there is the other coin, which is about how do you get the right delivery at the right quality at the right time. And, you know, while I think you've got a great planning and development team, actually the real expertise you've got sits, you know, as an example in this room. How do you see yourself engaging with these guys to get that sort of delivery that you need? You know, you need 3,000 homes a year, and within that, a large chunk of those being social homes.
Yeah, I think we've got to continue to work with developers. We need a public-private partnership to help solve some of this problem, but also at the same time, the government are now consulting on further devolution. I'm very much hoping it's not just going to be devolution down to the metropolitan mayoral authorities, but we're arguing for double devolution, that there should be devolution also down to the metropolitan authorities across the West Midlands, so that decisions can be taken closest to people at the most appropriate level. Now, I do think the combined authority, since it was set up, has been very successful in drawing down funding for infrastructure investment around transport in particular, and we will expect to see some further devolution around infrastructure following the government's consultation, and we'll certainly be pushing for that. But as I've been saying, I think we need this double devolution down to the metropolitan level to help us deliver the housing needs that all local authorities have got to deliver across the country. I don't think we're going to be helped by what's proposed by the government for increasing flexibilities around permitted development. I think that's going to reduce quality. That's not the kind of development that we want to see in Birmingham. We want to see high quality, very well designed schemes that are creating a place where people will choose to live. We're not going to get that from the relaxation of permitted development, I don't think. And I think those proposals the government are coming forward with do conflict with what they're saying about giving greater weight to design guide. So I'm not convinced that what the government are doing at the moment is going to help us with the delivery of affordable housing, nor do I believe it's going to help us create great places to live.
And your conversations with the Mayor of the West Midlands, how's that going in terms of that double devolution discussion, in terms of how WMCA beyond sort of investment, infrastructure investment is coming in? You know, is it evolving into those sort of more in-depth conversations to provide you the sort of flex you need locally?
Yes, it is. We've had a very interesting series of meetings across the summer, across these virtual platforms. Started off with the Met leaders getting together and discussing the idea of double devolution. We then fed that into the local authority. I have to say, in all fairness, it's been supported by the Mayor. We're submitting, we've got a joint submission from the combined authority that involves all of the metropolitan authorities going into government, and then each of us individually are also responding to their consultation. So we're going to give this a real push. I hope the government are genuine in their words when they talk about devolution, and that we will see some meaningful engagement that will allow for this concept of double devolution to take place and us making decisions closer to people.
Okay, and Adam, I just want to sort of touch a little bit on the WMCA and the sort of
Sure.
work, because again, you guys have been steeped in working in public-private partnerships there. How are they helping and supporting you in delivering schemes like Portloop? Given obviously heard Ashley sort of touched on earlier, a lot of these site preparations and remediation costs are quite substantial costs. To what extent are they helping you as a developer move forward with schemes which can be quite a struggle on viability grounds alone and getting those sites up and running? Are you seeing that engagement?
Well, I mean, firstly, I'd just like to say affordable housing is clearly a challenging subject, and I don't profess to have all the answers. I'm not sure everyone on this call does. But I think a real fundamental, which Ian touched on, was regardless of whether it's the affordable agenda, I think firstly the approach has got to be all homes have got to be designed to the right standards and be fantastic design and quality and sustainable, and then work hard to make that as affordable for all as possible. And certainly we're trying to test that at Portloop, where even with the first 40 homes, 5 of them are affordable, and we're about to do 20% in the next phase. Your question about the combined authority, we've been working in the Midlands for a long time. We had a successful time here, particularly working with Birmingham on Fort Dunlop, on Rotunda, some big projects, and now at Portloop. Portloop excited us and brought us back to the Midlands. We are keen to do more here. What Portloop has, that urban grey and the canal, you see that all. It's 15 minutes from the city centre. There are lots of sites in other regional cities like that. We really want to work with all the other partners in the area, just like we are with Birmingham, to bring forward great homes and communities. Part of that role is working with the combined authority, and obviously we signed a deal. I'm losing track of time now with COVID, but earlier this year with them to work together to deliver 10,000 homes across the region. And that how that manifests itself is in various forms. From working together to work with other partners in the region. Providing support, as you touched on. It's no secret that combined authority obviously administering huge grants to the area for all types of industries, not just property, and sort of we're working with them to try and find sites where we can pull in that support to unlock them. I think we haven't. I think clearly one of the challenges of the Midlands and at Portloop is industrial sites, the huge costs in actually getting to a development plateau. So we announced a deal recently on Portloop, for example, where they did support us with some debt funding. It wasn't and a small amount of grant to get part of the scheme going. Exactly like in the first phase, we got debt funding off Homes England. It took to help us deliver some innovative homes where perhaps commercial lenders might take a different view.
Okay, so you are getting essentially sort of, for want of a better word, some help with the financial side of things to help support and bring forward some of these sites. I guess, James, hearing this is, West Midlands Combined Authority, it's a sort of all-empowering body that's meant to be bringing land assembly forward, meant to be helping with funding and investment. You've committed yourself as MODA quite hard in the city. Do you feel WMCA are doing enough from where you sit, given actually there's a huge opportunity across not just Birmingham City but across the region? And actually, while I have you on the sort of podium, there is a question that has come in specifically on Birmingham. Is the question is, where do rental homes fit in Birmingham's housing growth plans? If you were advising Councillor Ward as the expert advisor on BTR, where would you suggest he looks at those growth plans for rental at the same time? So it's a twin question. One are really around regional leverage, and then really bringing it back to your specific area around BTR, and where would you advise Councillor Ward to focus that, what I'll call affordable rent product to come forward?
Okay. Well, just in terms of the combined authority, just to give you a practical example, yes, we've had plenty of engagement. And on the Mercian, which is on Broad Street, we've established alongside the combined authority and the City Council, together with MODA and our contractor CISC, training hub. And we've established that training hub. And to date, we've created 140 new jobs, placements and apprenticeships for specifically unemployed local people. And they go on a 20-day placement with a guaranteed outcome in relation to interview, and 140 of those people have been successful through that process. And that is a process that's continuing. And if we're successful at Great Charles Street, that's something that we will roll out. And I think, as you know, for us, we're looking at, a number of other opportunities where, and as Adam said, that grant funding, both from the Combined Authority and Homes England, will make a significant difference to, the bottom line in relation to the appraisal, particularly upfront infrastructure costs, which is very difficult, and particularly from a build to rent point of view. We're a cash business effectively. And so those really do make, significant inroads into your ability to be able to deliver and provide. Because one of the things, thinking about sort of our board is, in the horror that is COVID, we're feeling buoyant in relation to the build to rent market and the build to rent sector. And, there's a continuing growth within that. And there's some data from Savills, I think it was, talking about the fact that there's around about 170,000 build to rent homes either under construction or in the pipeline, and that is continuing to grow all of the time. Going back to the second part of the question, I think, again, it's a real mix, because what you're really after is choice. Now, there isn't one set generic answer for these things, because some people will want to live in the core urban areas and some people will want to live in, the suburban areas. And there are a number of providers now looking at sort of mid-market accommodation in more suburban areas in accessible locations. I think the beauty of some of the things that we've been able to deliver in terms of indoor and outdoor space, co-working is a really big key thing within our development. So, you're not constantly trapped within, or that perception of being trapped in your home. You're able to get out and about. So I think it is a blend. And I think you'll see much more of that coming out over the course of the next sort of 2 or 3 years. Actually, people considering build to rent in the long term. These are people's homes which they will stay in long term, whether it's an open market product or a build to rent product. And it's one of the things I have a problem with in terms of the white paper, and I've written about it and things like that, is actually the build to rent is not mentioned once in the white paper, and it's a colossal missed opportunity by government, unfortunately, given the pace that the sector is moving at and the quality that is being delivered because of that long-term management and stewardship within it. It's a phenomenal sort of potential for major cities like Birmingham and within the region to be able to deliver real quality for a blend and a mix. I mean, and before I finish, because it's one of my favourite stats, is in Angel Gardens in Manchester, our youngest resident is 6 months old, and our oldest is nearly 80. And it just gives you that breadth and the choice and the offer that we've got within, within our developments as they come forward.
You've all been really too nice to each other, and it's very uncomfortable. So we're going to do the 360 game. And this 360 game is a very simple one in the time that we have, is that, Councillor Ward, you're going to give us a 360 on how you believe your fellow private sector folk, what are the good things and what are the bad things that you feel still need improvement. Let's be polite in that, I guess, to sort of say, look, this is what you need more from, this is what we're not getting, and this is what. So the 360 game is going to work very simply. That what I want from you, each of you, is to give a response, obviously respectively Adam, Ashley and James, what you feel the council could do better on. And indeed you can expand to the WMCA if you wish, because it's all part of the same sort of emphasis that we're looking at. So I'm going to kick off with you, Councillor Wood. You've got these 3 developers here, they're doing great guns in your city. You're obviously dealing with a plethora of other developers as well, but what are the things that they could do better on to help you deliver what you need as leader of your great city?
Well, I think first of all, what's good is the close working between developers and the City Council and the quality of what we're getting in terms of design and placemaking. That's really, really good. What's not so good is, and inevitably this is going to be problematic, is pace of delivery. So we have a huge housing need in the city, and we need to meet that housing need. So although we're making good progress thus far, we need to continue with that over the next 11 years if we're to get there. And I've got a couple for you on the CA, actually. I do think grants on the CA, particularly around land remediation, very, very helpful. Brownfield sites, reclaiming those. We've had 20 million for the village site out in Perry Bar. On the flip side of that, I do think the CA have created a lot of red tape that people now have to wade through. And I really don't see the point of why they are producing things like a design guide for residential development when they're not a planning authority. We're out to consult on our design guide later this month, which hopefully will be well received.
Do you think they want to be a planning authority?
I think they probably do.
And just before I open to the other to give them the 360 on you, what stick do you think you want to think about in making sure that delivery happens? Because at the end of the day, planning permission is just the beginning of the process. What are the levers that you think you want to be empowered with to actually make sure you get the delivery at the pace you need it to be?
Well, land banking is the problem, isn't it? And having a lever to unlock sites that are not being brought forward for planning permission and development, we need something on that.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Ashley, your 360 on the City Council and the WMCA.
To be fair, I haven't really got any bad comments of things that I'd say that they would really improve on. We've had a very good working relationship, and particularly through COVID, we found that officers have been very creative in trying to help us move forward. So I think from that, over the last few months, we've been very pleased with the working relationship that we've had. I think on a planning terms, I think my, I suppose, real challenge is from a government perspective and the regulations and the new white paper. I believe that the new white paper won't help delivery brought forward quicker. I'm really sceptical about zoning of land. I think that will take away creativity of developers, but if you're going to zone land and get it right, it means you've got to do all of the detail earlier on, and who's going to do that? And I'm not sure it's going to work. If it cuts red tape, then it's a positive step. And I suppose the real challenge for me is that as a builder, we are probably not the quickest of builders. And the reason we're not the quickest of builders is that because we strive for quality and we have very set standards of timescales that we build to. And I don't think that there's a balance between delivery and quality and getting that right. I think the only way you can really improve the quality and delivery is generally going to, particularly with the resourcing issues we've got with construction workers, etc., is probably looking at different ways of building, like modular, like Adam's got at Portloop. So I think there's got to be different ways of building, and that's a challenge for everybody to take on. But I think the white paper is something, particularly with everything else that's going on, I'm not sure it's the right time for some of these types of reforms.
Tried to duck the issue of giving any real constructive 360 back to the City Council, but what you did say at the beginning of your sort of opening remarks, actually, was you talked about obviously the known unknown around the sort of commercial space that you put for Eastside Locks, and you don't know where that lands going forward. Is it this sort of flexibility of understanding where the environment changes, where you want to work with the City Council to provide the right sort of offering when you get a clearer picture? Is that sort of adaptability is what you're going to be looking for the city?
I think so. We obviously we set a vision for the site, and we worked very closely with the officers to set that vision. We were very happy with the vision at that time. The world 12 months on is a very different place, and I think we all have to learn to be more flexible, to be able to get things done, because I don't think it's right from anybody's perspective to want to build something and actually have empty spaces at the ground floor. It's really important for placemaking, it's really important for public realm and how you build communities that we all get it right. So I think from my perspective, I've got a number of schemes that I need to look at, and obviously part of the challenge of delivery is delivering homes, but creating jobs as well. And it's making sure that we're creating the right types of jobs and the right spaces and delivering the schemes in the right way.
Perfect. Adam, you've had time to think of your 360. Councillor Ward doing a good job. Is there something he could be doing better with his team?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to be a bit careful because we were obviously a partner as well on a number of schemes. So this could be interesting. I think we've always had a really good relationship with the city. Generally, Rotunda, and obviously on Port Loop. I think some of the concerns I had are now being addressed, like trying to get cars off the streets in the city centre, trying to pedestrianise as much of the city centre. I think that is now happening. I'd probably take it even further. I know there's people who are on train, bus routes, but still drive into the city centre and park in their office car park. And, if we could try and get more of those off the road and make the city more sustainable, we should do. I think there's probably with someone mentioned about land banking. There's a bit of the problem in the city where I started out working in architects in Bradford Street in sort of 2000. I've come back to that office and most of the street's still the same, because people are just sitting on old buildings thinking on a pot of gold. And if we're going to move on parts of the city, we need to do something about that. I'm not going to make friends here, am I, with some of the landowners in the city? But it's not specifically aimed necessarily just at Birmingham, but I think maybe a controversial move that we could look at is, all land's fixed and actually it's all about design, and you bid on design. That would make life a bit more interesting. But generally, no, we've got a really good relationship with the city. It's moved on so much since I've been working in the city, and design quality, and it's stepping up every year.
Golden report here, Councillor Ward. James,
you're going to rely on me then? Well, I suppose again, it's a sort of a shared frustration across a number of authorities. I think is resourcing of planning teams and design teams. And whilst again, I agree, we've had a really good engagement. We want to move at pace. And I sometimes look at the officers that we deal with, and they do, the vast majority do a fantastic job, but, they've got a lot on. And I'd like to see the City Council continue to invest in their planning teams. I know that, Ian has got some jobs out there wanting to be filled and some posts to be filled, but resourcing, I think, in and around the planning teams and the regen and the development teams would be really useful, because the heartbeat of the city is going to come from that new regeneration. I think the other thing is, sometimes things take a little bit too long, and I'm sure it's a frustration for Ian. Looking at the sort of transport strategy, and I know that was only published in January, but we've had a number of discussions about the A38 and wanting to sort of downgrade. It's a huge barrier within the city, and I know the city's been talking about it for many a year. And I know it's a complicated topic, but let's just get on with it, really, because I think as we all strive to create places, exceptional places, and reclaim streets, those sort of big ticket items. And I suppose the third thing for us will be, and again, not necessarily directed particularly at Birmingham, is just the predictability of political decision making. We spend, all of us, huge amounts of time and resource getting to a point where we get our applications recommended for approval, and we want to make sure that we can deliver them quickly, without too much political interference. And I think that's really important. And I think the government are seeking to change that through the white paper, but I fear that some of that local democracy is going to suffer as a consequence, because the idea that you're going to get an automatic outline through a growth area for a substantial development, and then all of the detail will then be delegated to officers, somehow doesn't feel particularly democratic to me. And there's this mismatch of local consensus through design guides, all happening at one time through the local plan process. That is a seriously crowded dance floor, and I just don't see how that's going to work, personally.
I think many echo that view, James, as well, and that's a debate for another sort of planning view of the future white paper discussion, because there's a lot underneath that. So we are about to just close the session. And before I do so, we talked about the issue of sort of fixed, sort of affordable housing tariff, or what I call, we've got the SIL and the Section 106. Government are looking at a national rate. So I'm going to ask James, Ashley, and Adam either fixed or negotiated. In other words, fixed as a set national rate, or negotiated through your traditional 106 routes. I want one answer to that, and then I'm going to give Councillor Ward a final sentence to be able to give us the confidence we all want to hear from him about how he's going to take his city forward before handing back to Simon. So, James, fixed or negotiated?
Negotiated every time.
Ashley?
Negotiated.
Adam.
Negotiated. Or working together in a JV.
I hope the writer of that paper heard that loud and clear. I would say negotiated as well. Councillor Ward, just before we hand back to Simon, last words from you, please, because we know and appreciate you're going through a huge tough time in your city to navigate all the things that are going on, and we appreciate all the work that you and your team are doing. Just give us a sense of where you're going next and what you want from us as a closing statement.
Well, I think to just agree with some of the things that James was saying, we do want to give developers certainty through the planning process. We want political influence, which is different from political interference, which we shouldn't be getting. Let's be clear about that. But I absolutely agree that the shift of public consultation onto development, the plan process, the bringing forward the plan and taking it away from planning applications is definitely a move away from democratic accountability for development, and we don't want to see that. And all the things that the government's trying to crowd into the plan process, I think that James's words was a very crowded dance floor, and I agree absolutely with that. So I hope that going forward, we can continue to work very closely with developers, give you that certainty around the planning process, and continue to make Birmingham a very vibrant place where people will continue to choose to live.
Thank you. Thank you all my panellists, and thank you, Councillor Ward, particularly for your time under this particular pressured period. Simon, can I hand over to you for closings?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to Councillor Ian, Adam, Ashley, James, and of course our chair this morning for us. Thank you again to Councillor Ian for your keynotes, very thought-provoking. I mean, there are some obvious stats that come out of that in terms of within the city boundaries, 51,000 new homes by 2031 is still a chunky number. 35% of that being affordable, and obviously that became apparent, not that it wasn't apparent before, but that is a challenging figure. Combine that with a population rise by the same time in the same time period, 156,000, if I remember correctly. That's a combination that's a challenge for anybody, isn't it? And I think everybody working together is absolutely critical for that. I'm delighted that you touched on the Commonwealth Games. Thank you. And it's great to hear that Perry Bar is obviously, with recent news, is still going ahead, and 1,400 homes is no small amount, and obviously the knock-on effect that's going to have to the area, the immediate area, of another 2,000 homes, and obviously the job creation, the commercial elements that are associated to housing development is critical to that. So that's great. That's great to hear. And there are other examples that you gave. Castle Vale being a quick one to mention. Just going back from a commercial developer's point of view, Urban Splash, a couple of notes there. Not putting the brakes on, like the sound of that. Barclays and Joseph, nothing has changed. Although you could do a few more ovens, I believe, but hopefully that gets rectified. And Moda BTR's come out of it, pretty well by the sounds of it. So from a commercial perspective, there have been many angles that have been covered today, and I genuinely thank you all for them. It's great to see that the commonality between everything there, that what hasn't been lost and what has been challenging times, and for a number of reasons, obviously especially commercially, but there is still a very, very keen eye within these hefty targets that placemaking is absolutely critical, and all the elements that come under placemaking is absolutely core to what everyone is doing, and that's very refreshing to hear. So I think the general mood is optimistic with a dash of caution. I think that seems like a fairly good blend to me. Going to wrap up very soon. Today's session will be available in the future on our YouTube channel. So if you find us on YouTube, please do subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's throughout lockdown, and throughout not just lockdown, but throughout the whole of this process, shall I call it that? That there have been some excellent sessions that will dovetail with today, and they could well be of interest. Our next event is September the 25th, and that is the Changing Investment Agenda, with a focus on the northwest of England. That's balancing commerciality with social responsibility and sustainability. That proves to be another wonderful session. Finally, a special mention to our sponsors today, Terence O'Rourke. It's very kind of you. You are very close partners of ours, and we do very much appreciate it. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope you found it of value. I hope you have a great Thursday, Friday, and a marvellous weekend. And from the whole team at Movers and Shakers, please stay safe. Many thanks. Cheerio. Bye bye.